Hi team, Adam Thompson here from My Mortgage. Video today for all investors who have got a few properties and they're looking to buy more, and just to talk about your merits of being with one bank versus splitting across a couple of different banks, and the different pros and cons of doing that. So first up, I'm a believer in splitting your lending across multiple banks once you get over a certain number of properties. The reason is there is in theory a lot of loyalty from one bank to a client, and a lot of people say, hey, look, I've always dealt with that bank, they're great. But what happens is that if a policy changes at that one bank, that can lock up your entire investment portfolio and say, hey, cool, we can't do any new lending. And you go, oh, well, I'll just take my property across to another bank. And they'll go, oh, our policy says you can't do that, you can't move it right now. We especially saw that when some of the LVR caps came in, that people wound up being marooned at one bank, even though they had really good equity in a property that they might have bought 10 years ago or something, and they built up really good equity, but because the security was cross-collateralized across their other properties, it meant that they were actually locked up with that and they couldn't take it away. The other risk of having it all with one bank is that when you get beyond a certain number of properties, for some banks it's a certain amount of rental income, for others it's a certain number of properties, around sort of 4 or 5. A bank will throw you across to a business manager or a commercial team. In theory that's good, however they have a different set of requirements, and sometimes depending on what you're doing, you can find that commercial business team might not be giving you the best rates, and they might be there more to check up on you than they are to help you. Obviously every bank's different, but that sort of situation of being in a business team, potentially having to pay commercial rates when you get into that commercial investor type scenario, it's not the best thing for you and your business of investing in properties that you're running. So getting some other banks at play is the way to go. How do you do it? Well, first of all, having a bit of a look at your portfolio, looking at where your loans are at, and looking at where you might be able to unencumber a property. The LVR limits have dropped. A lot of the banks are now allowing 80% lending on rentals. It's a really good time to be looking at, could I remove a mortgage from one property, have it unencumbered, and that means that you've got all the equity in that property to use to leverage off for something else, and you leave your other rentals in place with the bank at 80%. They can sit there and do their thing. That's awesome. When you come to buy a new property, you can use that unencumbered property to go and leverage off and go and buy another property. You might not have to unencumber it to do that. It might be when you're buying a new property, you can offer the new property plus another property and go and make it work. And that means that you are a residential investor at both banks. You've got really good rates. You've got flexibility. If there's a policy change, there's going to be no pressure on you. And it also means if you need to pull a lever on something, you need to do a renovation, but one bank's got a bad policy, well, you've got an option to go at another bank there and borrow some money. We did one recently where a client was building some minor dwellings on the back of a property, and that property there in particular had a mortgage with one bank, but we funded the minor dwellings through another bank because that bank there wanted all manner of conditions for doing this, whereas this bank over here actually had a pretty easy construction policy, and they were actually funding a build on another bank's property. So look, it doesn't really matter which bank. For us, we're all about managing your overall portfolio. You've got a business to run. You need to go out there and do well with your investments, find the right properties and manage them well. Our job is simply to make sure that you are paying as little as you can on your mortgage, and then you've got a structure that's going to get you ahead and help you to achieve your goals. So I'd love to work with you as an investor myself. So get in touch, click the Contact Us page, flick an email through to Adam, and I'd love to just save you some money and make things easy. Cheers.